Ladies and gentlemen, just a quick announcement. Thank you for being here tonight. Welcome to the Columbus Metropolitan Club's annual meeting. In about 10 minutes, we're going to take seats. Thank you. That's got to be Jane. Oh, no, that's Lainey. In about 10 minutes, we'll take seats for our annual meeting and the beginning of our program, about 10 minutes from now. Until then, please enjoy, get plenty of food and something to drink. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I can't. Well, but this is. Hi, how are you? Good to see you. I saw your wife. I didn't get to see you. I saw that. That's awesome. Thank you. Good job. Good job. Thank you, folks. Grab another drink, plate of food, have a seat. Got so quiet now they're not sitting yet. Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Suddenly it turned into church. Hi, Tanny. There's some prime seats up front, folks. Yes. Okay, folks, let's find some seats so we can get this show on the road. Come on, board members, be leaders. Well, good evening and welcome to the Columbus Metropolitan Club. It's our annual meeting and summer celebration And we used to say summer celebration and the most fun you've ever had at an annual meeting. And I think we've already proven that again tonight. Don't you think, Kelly? I think so. Yay. Anytime there's a buffet like that and an open bar, how can you miss, right? Well, my name's Jane Scott, and it is indeed a privilege and an honor to serve as president and CEO of the Columbus Metropolitan Club and to be the first to welcome you to our program this evening on behalf of our Board of Trustees and our staff. We call this our annual meeting and summer celebration because we really do have a lot to celebrate. And we use our annual meeting as an opportunity to say thank you to a lot of people who help us put on 51 programs a year and produce the kind of programming, the quality of programming that we do and support our organization throughout the year. CMC is blessed with many, many sponsors who are listed on the back of your forum flyer. They're also in your program, in the annual report that's at your seat. Our sponsors account for more than 50% of our total operating budget, so they're extraordinarily important to us. Today's annual meeting is supported by the American Dairy Association Mideast, my friends at the Dairy Association, and Deloitte. Our live streaming is presented by the Center for Human Kindness at the Columbus Foundation with support from the Columbus Dispatch. Let's start by thanking our sponsors. We're also indebted to hundreds of experts, politicians, journalists, executives, and everyday citizens who speak at our forums. Without their willingness to share candid thoughts, insights, and their opinions on camera and their precious time, there really wouldn't be any CMC forums. And we've tackled some pretty tough issues this past year, but CMC embraces difficult topics and welcomes speakers who express controversial points of view that frankly sometimes make us pretty uncomfortable and make us squirm a little bit. We frequently take some hits for our choices. My email lights up, social media lights up, my staff gets nervous, but we know our founding mothers are smiling and are proud of the work that we do. Only at the Metropolitan Club do discussions like that happen. And it reflects our commitment to diversity, discussion, and debate. And we're very proud of that. The forums we presented this past year, and the speakers, panelists, and hosts, the class of 2022, are featured in the annual report. I don't know, there may be some folks here that were speakers. Would you guys, everybody wave if you've been on our panel? I know Tom Schmidt's here, I know Napoleon's here. There's some other folks that have been part of our speakers this past year. So thank you so much. We really appreciate it. We also depend on generous volunteers who donate time and expertise. Our official photographer, Rick Buchanan from Rick Buchanan Photography, with backup from Ian Krupler and Sharina Shee from Ian Alexander Photography, who capture amazing images and create a permanent CMC archive, which is on our website, so you can see some amazing pictures. And how would any of us ever survive coming to a Metropolitan Club if we weren't greeted at the door by Joey Thomas's warm smile? She is our hospitality committee. Alan Reese, Evan Smith, Sterling Carter, Josie Smith, and Carlos Taborda from CTV operate our TV cameras and sound in the live stream, the forums on YouTube and Facebook, Twitter, and CMC's website. Forums are also rebroadcast on Columbus Television, Ohio Channel, OSU Digital, WOSU Digital, and turned into a podcast on WCBE on Saturday mornings. The team here at the Boathouse, I hope you enjoyed the food in the bar tonight. They do a tremendous job for us. Edward Reynoso, the general manager, Regina Myers, and Chef Carlos, they turn things around because we turn our guarantee in on Mondays for Wednesday lunch. So, and finally, I really want to recognize my team, Doug Buchanan, Lainey Cuthbert, Montra Moody, who's probably outside, with support from Amanda Sage and Lori Levison. They do a lot of work for you all, and I'm very, very proud of them. And that applause is for everyone that helps us put our forums on. So I rarely do this, but I want to publicly express my gratitude to my dear husband, Chris. He is a dedicated CMC member and an enthusiastic and willing partner in my work for CMC. Thank you, Chris. So tonight's really special for Chris and me because this is my last annual meeting as Metropolitan Club CEO. I am retiring from the Columbus Metropolitan Club in May of 2023. Yes, I really am. It's 8 months, but those 8 months are going to just evaporate. So it's very exciting for me and for Chris. We have lots of things planned, lots of travel. I don't have a second chapter. I'll figure that out later. It's been an absolute joy for me to be president and CEO of the Columbus Metropolitan Club, and I'm very, very proud of what we as an organization have accomplished in the almost 20 years since I've been at the helm. See, this is why I didn't want to do this. Okay, so I grew up Mennonite, and this is very difficult for me to be in the spotlight. I don't have my cover on anymore. So, but I do want to assure you that everything's in great shape. Metropolitan Club's probably in the best shape it's ever been in. And I'm really, really excited to pass the torch of this amazing organization to the next leader. I certainly hope that my successor enjoys the close relationship with our board chairs and our board that I have. It's essential to how this organization runs. And it's a healthy culture, and it's the foundation for CMC's success. I invited the board chairs that I served under to be my special guests this evening. So Janet Jackson, where are you? She was my first chair. Janet had just taken over United Way, and she basically said to me, and I quote, "Call me if you're bleeding." And I don't think I ever had to do that. Susie Swanson was chair during our 30th anniversary, and we made some big strides. Where's Susie? Stand up, Susie. Yeah. And Elfie DeBella, Rich Terapak, Mo, we all became very good friends. Mo, Rich, where's Elfie? These folks provided tremendous leadership, and they were mentors, supporters, and friends, and I can't really thank them enough. Our current board chair, Kelly Atkinson, is thoughtful, she's thorough, she responds to email in about 2 seconds, and is always thinking of creative ways to improve CMC. She really motivates and inspires me, so please welcome the chair of the Columbus Metropolitan Club, Kelly Atkinson, to the stage.
Okay, thank you, Jane. I'd like to officially call the annual meeting of the members of the Columbus Metropolitan Club to order. And my first order of business, of course, is to recognize Jane's retirement. We actually talked about me pretending to be in complete shock when she announced it this evening. And the truth is that we've known for a number of years, so this is not actually a surprise, but it's still really hard for me to believe, and really actually even harder for me to accept it. So that doesn't change, even if you know forever. During Jane's years with CMC, membership grew from 600 to nearly 1,400. That's right, very well celebrated. And then forum attendance went from 110 per forum to 220 pre-COVID as our average. Also impressive. As the pandemic surged in the spring of 2020, our CMC team quickly shifted from in-person audiences to live streaming as a public service, which we have intentionally continued in order to best serve the community in this new normal. Sponsorships have also grown significantly since Jane took the reins in 2003, from 82,000 annually to more than 400,000, representing more than 100 sponsors in our community. Yes, thank you. She's nailing it. Financial stability and sustainability, quality of programming, level of staff professionalism, and truly all aspects of CMC have benefited from Jane's unwavering leadership. From a board standpoint, she's made it incredibly easy to serve. From a personal standpoint, she's been a mentor to me for nearly 10 years now. Saying that we'll miss her, that I'll miss her, is an extreme understatement. But I know that she and Chris will continue to make their mark around the globe and their dinner parties in Columbus and everywhere else they venture, so we must move on. The Board of Trustees has a transition team who has engaged the benefactor group to guide our search for a new leader. Given all you've just heard, it will clearly be difficult to fill Jane's shoes, but she's leaving the organization in a very strong position, so the next CEO will have a tremendous opportunity to build on CMC's success. There will absolutely be more chances throughout the coming months to thank Jane, but please join me now in thanking her for her service. Thank you. Now, let's continue our business by introducing CMC board members who are here tonight. So I'm going to ask all of you to stand as I say your name and stay standing until everyone has been introduced. Deb Hackathorne, our vice chair. Ellen Block, treasurer. I don't know where everyone is, so I'm not going to even try to find them. Kristen Easterday, saw you over there. Matt Barnes, Tony Bell, Doug Buchanan, Tommy Harmon, Josh Harrison, already standing, I see back there. Miel Jurist, Joelle Kuzam, Liz Moat, Anthony McIntosh, Stephen Myers, Eddie Pauline, also already standing back there, Deborah Price, and Carrie Schmidt. And that's everyone who's here tonight, but the complete list of board members is in your annual report. So I wanted to just say real quick, hold on. We as an organization and I as chair are beyond grateful for how much you give to this organization. And now we'll clap for you. We also have many CMC committee members and past board members in the audience, which is such a treat for us. So please stand so we can thank you as well. Anyone? Press? Yeah, yes, Julie. Ramon, Carol, yes. Thank you so much. Okay, now for our second item of business, I call on Leadership Committee member Deb Hackathorne. Deb?
Thank you. For those in the front row, I'm the sound behind this podium. I'm going to be the chair soon. I'd like to get lower podiums or, yeah, a box. I need a box. Thank you. Thank you, Kelly. The Leadership Committee, and I apologize, Steve Marks is the chair of our Leadership Committee. Many of you know Steve. He is unfortunately out of town on business today, so I am substituting for him. Our Leadership Committee is formally known as our nominating committee, so we help to screen and suggest new members to join the Board of Trustees. It currently consists of, and if you're here, please stand, wave, Mary Yost, Carol McGuire, Stephen Moore, Eddie Pauline, Deborah Price, Josh Harrison, and of course, the chair, Steve Marks, and me. For a 3-year term to the CMC Board of Trustees, we are pleased to recommend Amelia Robinson, the Opinion and Community Engagement Editor at the Columbus Dispatch. Amelia, I see you in the bright yellow, standing in the back. Please wave. If you haven't already gotten to know Amelia, her bio is in your forum flyer, and we encourage you to get to know her. Madam Chair, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Deb and committee, for taking care of that. Are there nominations from the floor, or is there a motion to accept the slate of candidates as presented? All right. Thank you very much. Please join me in welcoming Amelia to our board. That's official. I also want to acknowledge our gratitude for our 2 trustees who are retiring from the board this year, the Deborah Price, who has served as chair of the Resource Development Committee, as well as Tom Daly, who's not here tonight, but who served as our board secretary this past year. And Jane has a gift for Deb, so making her way. Both Deb and Tom have made significant contributions with their time, talent, and resources, so please join me in thanking them for their dedicated service. as your chair, I am pleased to announce that CMC has had a successful year, even as we've had to transition from operating in a pandemic to whatever we're calling now. This past year, CMC presented 51 lunch forums and 3 special events that featured just under 200 speakers. While in-person audiences have resumed, average attendance has not quite returned to pre-COVID numbers, but the world, including Columbus, and particularly how we work and live, has changed. As I mentioned earlier, continuing our live streaming provides a valuable option and great opportunity to include an even broader audience in the important conversations that we facilitate every single week. In fact, our combined in-person and online audiences match or exceed numbers prior to shutdowns. Membership, too, is returning to pre-COVID levels, and I want to take just a second to introduce and welcome several new members. We'll save our applause for the end, but please do stand if you are here tonight and I call your name. We have Stephanie Davis-Wallace and Daniel Walshaw of the Columbus Symphony, David Kaufman of Capital University, Gerald Maloney from AEP, and then United Way of Central Ohio is hitting it out of the park with not 1, not 2, but 3 new members. They have Robert Fournier, Amy Grubbs, and Seth Dabelayer. We have Michael Burkaki from Huntington, Lavia Brockman of Brookings Institution, and Laura Fish, who I just met tonight, so I know she's here, from Applegate Talent Strategies. Last but certainly not least on this list, though, I want to call out our newest lifetime member, which is our board member, Carrie Schmidt. So, from Plentiful. Thank you all for your support and welcome to the new members. All right. Now to highlight another group's accomplishments. Our staff orchestrated the entire year's exceptional programming while also producing a weekly forum flyer, twice weekly email announcements, hosting a social media marketing campaign, and creating 51 hours of original television programs and podcasts. If that weren't enough, they also maintained relationships with more than 100 sponsors who combined contributed a record $376,000 in cash sponsorships, as well as hundreds of thousands of dollars of gifts and services. If you don't already know these fine folks, and I know Jane did just also call them out, but if you don't know them, you really would normally think that that was a feat that would take a much larger team. To make it that much more impressive, this is a very small staff. So we'll call them out one more time. We have Lainey Cuthbert. She's shaking her head. Yes. She's the Vice President of Member and Sponsor Relations. Mantra Moody, who did make her way in the room now, so she's back there. Our Director of Events. Our Vice President of Programming, Doug Buchanan. Amanda Sage, also back here, who works as our part-time marketing consultant and who produced that annual report that's at your seats. And Lori Levison, our newest addition as a part-time administrative assistant. And of course, our fearless leader, President and CEO, Jane Scott. So I just am so grateful for all of them and all the work they do all the time. I feel a little like this annual meeting is kind of a love fest for all of the people that we just truly appreciate, but isn't that what it's supposed to be anyway? It's all about the people. That's what CMC is. CMC is community, right? So our staff, our board, our speakers, our valued members, and even the amazing guests who continue to show up. And we just really show Columbus and the world what civil and inclusive environments can look like with real conversation that doesn't avoid conflict or presume that one opinion is right over another. And that's what CMC is. That's why it was founded back in 1976, to connect people and ideas through community conversation. It's such an honor to serve as the chair of this board, and I am beyond proud of what we do each and every week to create community and ensure voices are heard on the ever important topics. And I want to thank all of you for keeping us going and supporting us with your presence and your membership, the sponsorships, and your time. From the bottom of my heart, truly, thank you. Now, before we conclude, I want to welcome Carrie Schmidt, who we've already heard her name a couple of times, that newest lifetime member and chair of our Resource Development Committee, to the stage for a special announcement. Carrie?
Also rather short on this side of the stage. No, they put us over here. If you walked in late, Jane's retiring. Just so everyone knows. And yeah, or just keep it up, Tanny, keep it up. And I'll make this real fast because I know we want to start, but we, of course, want to take this opportunity to honor all that Jane has done for CMC and truly to and through her contributions to CMC for Central Ohio and for our community, and giving us the opportunity to count on CMC to be putting on these forums that let us come together to learn, to share, to be inspired, to grow, and most importantly, I think, to connect. And so with that, the board has chosen to dedicate a legacy and civic engagement fund and pursue seeding that fund in her honor, but not just because Jane was so long leading this organization, but because she truly embodied what it means to be a community leader, and she values community leadership. So with this opportunity, we're going to shine a bright light on the community leaders that contribute so much to what Central Ohio is and can be, those who are emerging, those who are currently serving, and those who have been with us for some time. So more to come on that. This is just the preview. We look forward to inviting your participation with this.
All right. Thank you very much, Carrie. We look forward to hearing more about that in coming months. Okay, as we conclude our annual meeting, is there any further business? Seeing none, is there a motion to adjourn the annual meeting of the Columbus Metropolitan Club? All right, thank you. Our annual meeting is adjourned. That is a lot to say. So we're going to pause for just a second while we get our speakers up here and get them mic'd up. So talk amongst yourselves, meet your neighbor if you haven't already, and we'll be right back.
Overtraining for a marathon, and so it just kind of, went out on me. Cracked on me.
My husband's in a boot, so I like have sympathy for what
Yeah, it's absolutely awful. No. Me too, but I'd rather have this than a cast.
Yeah, no, he agrees with that as well. Yeah. Will I be able to get them to be quiet again? I know, I'm wondering. Yep, I usually look in the mirror to see what's happening on the... Join me at CMC.
Get engaged and get educated.
Join me at CMC. Everyone is welcome.
Join me at CMC.
Come grow your relationships.
Join us at CMC.
CMC is real,
Authentic conversation.
Engage with curious people.
Plus, we give you access to thought leaders
Be informed, be inspired.
through community conversation.
Come here and meet your neighbors.
Be here in the room.
Ask questions,
Get answers. Connecting people and ideas.
learn about Columbus.
Who will you see at CMC?
Join me at CMC.
You're invited. Watch us on live stream or in person. You're invited.
Join the conversation.
You're invited.
Welcome to CMC.
Okay. Hey, everyone, we're back. So I need you to take your seats. We're going to get started with our program. Thank you. That's so good. I think we need to get drinks flowing at lunches and we'll get more chatter. All right. Okay, are you ready? We're going to get started. So people frequently talk about how collaborative Columbus is. They often call it the Columbus way. You might have heard that. Our panel this evening takes a closer look at the power of partnership and explores what the Columbus way means to our community. So let's welcome Kevin Boyce, Franklin County Commissioner, Tanny Crane, President and CEO of the Crane Group, Kenny McDonald, President and CEO of the Columbus Partnership, and our host, Doug Buchanan, editor of Columbus Business First. All right. There's, of course, more information about our speakers in your forum flyer. And Doug, the stage is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, I've said this in a very different context, but the less I say tonight, the better. So, Kevin, how about you break the ice with what is happening with your foot?
I'm trying to think of something really cool to say, but I really have nothing cool to say. I was actually training for a marathon, and I had a fracture. And so I know, isn't that so sad? Yeah. So you're right, the sympathy vote. Yeah. So I've just got to wear this for a few months.
So the Columbus Marathon is out.
Yeah. I mean, I could hop the other way, but I don't think that'll work.
Right. All right. So just so we can set the table for what we're talking about, if we're talking about these public-private partnerships that are working, what would be the example or an example that you would pull out and lead with? Tanny, do you want to take that?
Well, we were just talking about it. I just think a great example is Adelphi Bank, and I'll let Kevin talk about it. But the first Black-owned bank, certainly in our community, and one of the few in the nation. And it was really Commissioner Boyce, his idea. And I think the collaborative spirit of coming to the Columbus Partnership, and really rallying behind the critical need that they've identified, and really not just financially backing it, but board support and rallying community support. I just think it's a great opportunity.
Do you want to expand on that?
Sure. Thank you, Tanny, for that setup. When I think about, so let me give you what I know. The banking is the second highest regulatory environment that exists on the globe. The first is nuclear power plants. So the effort to organize or form a bank is substantial. And when we started off the process to pull together this minority depository institutions, what's the technical term, we started this effort, I quickly realized, okay, I need some help. And so we hired we just searched for one of the best consultants in the nation, and it happened to exist in Los Angeles. And this was right around the time that George Floyd was murdered, and there was a lot of unrest nationally. We were just getting the pandemic going, so there were a lot of question and uneasiness in the country. When I called the consultant, I'll be very quick. When I called the consultant said, wow, the timing of this is incredible. I've had no less than a couple of dozen entities. He said, I've been doing this for 50 years, and I've had no less than a couple of dozen entities who are starting to organize an MDI. Fast forward 2 years later, you know how many made it through the regulatory process? One. And that's right here. But to Tanny's point, though, it's really an illustration of the collaborative spirit of Central Ohio, because there is no way possible that we would be on this home stretch of organizing. I hope there aren't any regulators in the room that are, watching me what I say here, but there's no way we'd be on this home stretch without the collaborative spirit of the Columbus Way. While I can't get into all of the details about who the investors are, advisors are, and folks who've just been engaged and encouraged us all along the way, I can tell you that only in Central Ohio do you have that type of spirit where at every layer, at every turn, there is a willingness to be engaged. And it didn't stop at just the organizing part. We have many partners who said, look, it's not just enough for us to be an investor and support you. What can we do to really address creating access to capital resources? What can we do to address home ownership? What can we do to address entrepreneurial opportunities? And every last one of those entities have been engaged with us in a way that I just cannot put in words. Mm-hmm. And that's why we've made it through the process over the last 2 years. And we're really at what I would say close to the final stage of the regulatory process.
And there was a role in the Columbus Partnership in this. Absolutely.
Well, the business community is involved in everything that Kevin and Tanny talked about. Tanny's a great example of that. And when you ask a question, Doug, I look down the river and think of the Scioto Mile, and I think of the Columbus Promise. I think of any real big thing that actually has happened in this community in the 12 years that I've lived here. It requires a public-private partnership. We like to think we're good at it, but it does require that to actually work. We don't have a business project in this county that we don't come to Kevin in his seat at the Franklin County Commission. They don't get anything done, and usually if the business community isn't behind it or private investment isn't involved. And increasingly, our academic institutions are sort of a third leg of that stool. And even with all the nonprofit leaders we have here and some of the incredible work that they do, and then financing they bring to the table, all of those elements working together with the expectation that everybody's going to do that, and at least try to make it work and usually get to the goal line, like Kevin said, that is unique. We're not the only ones who collaborate, but we get more things to the finish line than most people, I hope.
Right. And it sounds like, Kevin, you took this as a partnership, but if companies are coming to you or developers are coming to Franklin County, what is your process of deciding, yes, we will leverage public money in this, or this isn't something that is worth taxpayer involvement? Sure.
I mean, certainly when particularly big items, the best example I could think of is the Columbus Crew. Okay. When the owners of the Crew decided to move the team to Austin, Texas, it always takes a quarterback behind the scenes, and one person that says, "Okay, I'll quarterback." But the Central Ohio or the Columbus way is that everybody sort of gets in a huddle on the quarterback and says, "Okay, what's my part? I'm going to run the route. I'm going to carry the ball. I'm going to block. And that's how we work in Central Ohio. We're used to seeing a winning football team, so we all know our parts in that way. But that's an example where when it was presented to us, I remember getting a call from Alex Fisher, who was then leading the partnership, and said, "Hey, we've got to do something, and we've got to come together." And it's not that simple for us. We don't have a money printing press machine in the basement of the county, and we don't have unlimited funds. These are your funds, your tax dollars that are hard-earned dollars that we are stewards of. And so we have to look at everything from the standpoint of what is the greater impact to the masses. Does it create jobs? Does it create economic commerce? Does it do something? Is it inclusive of every community? And so once we meet those basic factors, then we talk about our role. And the partnership was so instrumental in saying, not only do you have a role, but we'll take the lead, and here's what our part will be. Okay. And that's where it motivates you to say, well, okay, well, this is our part. Well, we can handle that. We can block on this play. We can throw the ball on this play. We can catch the ball on this play, and just knowing your role and understanding it. And there are times where we take the lead and we go to people like Tanny or to Kenny McDonald or to Steve Steinauer, who's heading the partnership now, and we say, hey, we've got this idea, like we did with our Rise Together blueprint to eradicate poverty and racism in Central Ohio. And at every turn, folks have said, okay, here are our measuring sticks. Here's what we want to accomplish. Okay, now, what role do you have for me? What do you have for me? I know Tanny's on that board and helped us form that program. And that's just how we work in Central Ohio. It's just really part of the way it goes.
Tanny?
No, we can talk about Intel, this massive undertaking that's about to occur. And this is a regional approach. And that's how we really think about it, as a regional opportunity and a catalyst. And, we did a recent report from AECOM talking about what happens to cities that have a major opportunity, because we can either plan for it or be blindsided. And I think that's, again, where this collaborative spirit is, when we look at this as an opportunity. But we all together in the huddle have to plan and say, what role are we going to play? And like workforce development is going to be just a critical need that's just right upon us in 2025, along with critical needs of employers all over Central Ohio. So what role can we all play? And how can we make sure that it's an equitable role? I mean, that's something that has really come to the forefront of the Columbus Partnership. In terms of our growth has been remarkable, but it hasn't been a growth and prosperity for all.
Right.
And we're focusing on that. And so how can we, as a partnership with business leaders and the business community, how can we really support the workforce development in the future and ensure that our students in our school systems and our college students have an opportunity to thrive and stay here in Central Ohio?
Yeah, it's interesting because you plan for it or get blindsided by it, right? So we have an amazing opportunity to deploy a whole bunch of federal money that's coming our way. And, I feel like we either get our ducks in a row or this money just kind of like splashes all over the place. So what are we doing to ensure that, there's going to be winners and losers, but at least this money is going to be concentrated, I guess? Do you want to take it?
Well, that's a never like to think of it as winners and losers. And I think one of the things about Central Ohio that I like most is that our approach is not a no, but how. How do we get there? And a lot of times you go, and I'm familiar with a lot of other communities, you go in and folks want to just find a way to say, we can't do that. These are the rules why we can't. This is the structure. This is the history. This is the whatever. In Central Ohio, it's not no, but how. How do we get there? How do we meet that need? And it might not be today, but tomorrow. And I can think of 5 different things that beyond Intel, the crew, banking, that we need to collaborate on. Electric vehicle charging is queued up as a national effort by the White House and by car automakers. And so we've got to think collaboratively about how we can meet that need of a very changing environment around transportation and automobile providers. And so I'm absolutely certain Central Ohio will lead the way one way or another, because that's in our DNA, it's our spirit.
Okay.
We've used this approach as a catalyst to get moving again. I moved here right after the housing recession of 08 and 09, and we needed. It was a great community, but like a lot of places, it was trying to get its wheels turning again, and this collaborative spirit got us moving because it required people to lock arms. And now it's a little bit of an evolution of this approach. Now our problems exceed our capacity unless we do it. Now it's great that we have this muscle, that we built muscle to do this, and we built these relationships over time. We're also going to have to evolve and fold in new leaders. I think Tanny and I were with a group of partnership leaders last week, about 50 of us, and I would count maybe a third of them are very new. And when you say, what is the Columbus way, they might be coming into their seat for the first time. They may move up into the lead role in their company or something like that. And they're looking to those like Tanny and others and say, how does this really work? And it's hard to explain sometimes until you have that tangible project or somebody has that idea and you start to see the huddle form.
Right.
Right. And again, those huddles are getting bigger. More partners have to be involved. And then the final thing I'll say about it is the huddle looks different too since in my 12 years. That huddle was just some of the same actors, but it also wasn't diverse when you got around that. And who are we going to invite into that huddle, right? It's not up to us all the time, but who's when we look around that huddle, who's there? Because if they're one of the primary partners, the minority community, our immigrant community, people from different geographers doing this regionally, is increasingly that we're going to have to do it. And by the way, it makes it so much stronger. And if that evolution, if we're talking 10 years from now, and we're talking about another step change in this as we get to be an even bigger place or more successful place,
Right.
we really have done something.
Sure. Yeah, I do. I want to. Speaking of Intel, I mean the housing and I feel like housing and workforce are our twin real pressing needs. You know, it's not Intel didn't cause them, but it's accelerated.
Yeah. Bring up Intel, I will. No doubt.
Yeah. Tanny actually brought it up.
It's a catalyst.
Save it.
Yeah, it's a guess. So I think we know a little bit more about the workforce side, so we'll hit that in a second. But on housing, we need housing. We need all types of housing. We need affordable housing. Like what specifically are we saying that that's something that the public, in the public-private partnerships, like what are we saying that can be done to accelerate this building process that we need to get moving on?
Well, I'll start with that one too. First of all, we're in a national housing crisis, not just Central Ohio that's facing this challenge. Today, we are 50,000 units short today. We are projected to grow by over 1 million people over the next 20 to 30 years right here in Columbus. And so we've got some work to do. I think the collaborative spirit, the Columbus way, has to expand regionally. We've got to have that same relationship with Licking County and Delaware County, Union County, and all of those Fairfield County, all of the counties that surround us, so that regionally we can begin to work together to provide for the range of housing needs and collaborate in a way that if you work at Intel and you live in Newark, and maybe you work in Columbus and you have a relationship in Newark, that there's a seamless connection, and that you understand, when we think Intel, it's not in Franklin County, unfortunately, but it's not in Franklin County. But when we think of it as right here in Central Ohio. We think of it right here in Franklin County. You can best believe when I'm walking around the country, I talk about it being right here. But they don't know it's the next county over. But, the point is that in the big scheme of things, that's what's important. And that's the relationship that we have regionally to work together to address these needs. If we put that weight, if we bear that weight on the city of Columbus, if we bear that weight even on Newark, then we will have failed before we ever got started. So it requires us to think regionally and really go beyond our typical boundaries that we work through.
And in effect, you're saying we need to convince the suburbs and the exurbs and the counties to build more, to allow more housing, more variety of housing. Like
the range.
Yeah, the range,
Yeah.
because it's.
I might add to that, Doug. I will think we're at a very interesting time. And one thing that I think we all acknowledge ourselves, but we have to remember when we go about our day jobs, it isn't convincing someone to do anything. People are anxious. The changes we've lived through for 3 years and all the things that have happened to all of us.
Right.
When you're living in a community like ours where there's a lot of action and there's lots of things going on, and then you plunk down something like Intel that brings even more change or signals that there's even more change, it's appropriate for us not to try to convince anybody, but to sit down and listen and acknowledge that in this community, this is what they care about. And this is the history of this community, whether it's a township or a city or one of our counties. And if I look across the 11 counties we represent, 24 cities that are partners,
Right.
And they all have a little bit different take on things. You and I have talked about it being more like a quilt. And this is a patchwork that makes an unbelievable blanket at the end of the day, but there's lots of patches and it's all a little bit different. The more we do that and break that down and talk about the how to do it, how do we equip partners with tools to do it? How do you change zoning? How do we finance things? And how do we address it from homelessness all the way through to suburban subdivisions to address the crisis? Because we kind of have a gap on every level. And then how are we going to move people in between these and deal with some of our transit issues? And, there's just great housing partners. There's great transit partners and stuff like that. I will tell you, none of them will be successful by convincing anybody to do anything. It is truly about listening and partnering and acknowledging what the other partner needs out of this. And that's part of all these deals we just talked about. And it's going to be increasingly important as we go forward because we're going to be more diverse geographically, racially, everything else. We're going to have to be better listeners and better partners in both directions. And the table is set for that.
I would just add that, Kenny and the Columbus Partnership is already, and the One Columbus, and from back to Columbus 2020, has already kind of set the table in terms of developing relationships. So there's already building some trust. And I think it's also about setting a vision. And I'll tell you, it's also about really understanding the data. And I think when you bring people together around a table, and I look at this study when they showed aerial views of other cities, that the before and after, and again, back to being blindsided and seeing sprawl versus planned. I mean, when people start coming to the table, into the huddle, and start seeing what can happen to us versus a vision of what can this community be. And we've already established some relationships, and I've always trying to really understand, and that part of it is the listening and convening again and again and again about where are you coming from and how can we together as a community work. I do think that's what differentiates us, and hopefully we won't see that same aerial map in 5 years and in 10 years, because we have the benefit of watching others, but we also have the benefit of already creating some of our relationships and having this partnership together to say, here's the data, here's what we have in front of us, and we're competitive, and we do want, everyone can be winners, it's not winners, losers, but we as a community, we want to win. We want to be the first one to actually show that we can be planful. So I think that it's establishing trust is it's a very difficult task, and it takes a lot of time.
Right. I want to ask you, I think one of the better examples of public-private partnerships that we see are like when Nationwide Children's Hospital, the work that they've done on the south side, or around Parsons, Crane family, and the south side, and obviously Wineland Park before that. Like for a place like Linden or Milo Grogan or the Hilltop, like what can the corporate community be doing, that would be somewhat analogous to those having that kind of a nearby champion? Anybody?
Start.
Go ahead.
Okay, I'll start.
We'll all jump in.
I'll start by saying that, first of all, we haven't always gotten it right. We've certainly had our stumbles, and we've certainly had our failures in Central Ohio. And so I think it's learning from them is the first sort of key component to our own growth. I like that you brought up what the Crane family has done on the south side, because I think what happens when you have a corporate entity, corporate citizen, that can take the lead in sort of anchoring down on an issue or in an area, it allows for spurts of growth to happen in other places. The collaborative efforts find the project in many ways. And it's one of those things where, from a government standpoint, we rush to put resources onto the table where there are a corporate citizenry that's taken place, because they can do a lot of things that we just can't do. They can move a lot faster than we can move. They can address issues. They can zero in on real granular parts of their challenges in community better than we can often. And so a lot of times it's really just kind of knowing your role and then finding a way to be partnered with that. And believe me, I got many calls from Ms. Crane over here saying that we've got a problem with this, how we want to solve it. And I need the county or the city or the state to be right here. And she never came to the table and said, I need you to solve it all or provide all the it's resources. It's been, here's what I need from you.
Right.
And here's the minimum. And here's what we'd like to have. And then here's where you can really go to achieve it. And we find a place, and generally speaking, like I said, but we've not won at everything we've done. I mean, I can point out 10 examples where we can get better. We can learn from our mistakes and our challenges. And I think the difference is there is a culture that I would say encourages that kind of collaboration.
Right.
I think, it was exactly what Kevin, our Commissioner, was talking about.
Your honor is fine.
But, it's about finding the quarterback or finding the champion. And I have to give credit to Mayor Coleman, who actually was the real champion of the South Side and identified a significant challenge. And then he's smart enough to look around the table and said he can't get some things done. Right. And so he looked for a group of families or nonprofit leaders or faith-based leaders who has passion around it for some reason. And he happened to found us, and then we were able to really gather the community around. And because it's not about one family or one mayor or one entity, but it is really about how can we convene and bring the right folks together around it, and our nonprofit partners are really the ones that sealed the deal. But I mean, it's back to that collaborative effort, right. Finding the quarterback. I love the huddle. It's just, but reaching out, and the city, and this is a great example down at Reeb. I hadn't dealt with a city. We hadn't dealt with a city a lot, but I always thought of the city as bureaucracy. And I will tell you, every time we sat at the table, which was every week, the answer was yes. How do we do it? Every single week. And so that's the spirit that's like, how can we not get this accomplished? Right. When you have people around the table and someone, focus on the long term, not just, I'll be here for the next year, turning the page to something else, but you've got champions or quarterback that are really in for the long term sustainability.
If I could just add one thing, because I do want to point out, again, we're not up here saying that Central High is the utopia of all places, because you think about how Central High was founded on the west banks of the Scioto and began to grow in a western direction, then in an eastern direction. And so as a result, through the course of time, there have been communities that historically have been neglected for whatever time that was happening, existed then, whether it was the beginnings of Columbus or whatever. And so when Mayor Coleman and Tanny Crane worked together to zero in on some of the challenges of the South Side, the criticism that we have of ourselves is it took us so long to figure that out and to really dig in on those problems. So we've got our challenges. And I think of the highway system that separated communities and tore through historical communities that had a lot of rich history and changed the face of what we know to be those neighborhoods today. King Lincoln and so many others. We didn't always get it right. And so now we are working hard as we go into the next generation, the next phase of what Central Ohio is going to be, to do better than we did last time at recognizing where the greatest needs are in our community and really investing in that in a way that is more hopeful for the future.
Can I just give a plug? Before coming here tonight, I was over at the Columbus State Community College at Mitchell Hall. YWCA is sponsoring an amazing kind of project. And I will not get this right, but it's like Undesigning the Red Line. And it's an exhibit that talks exactly what the commissioner is talking about. And it's about through educating. It's really, it was eye-opening to so many of us. And recognizing the problem, how it came about, and then once we become educated, what can we do to move forward? But it's a tremendous exhibit. It's going to be traveling to the Columbus Library. I'm not on the YWCA board, but it is a really awesome exhibit.
Yeah, but so that is that next step then. So we identify the problem, we educate people, then who is going to step up and be that champion? Did you want to say something on this, Kenny? We've cut you off three
Well, I'm
or
up
four
here
times.
with two Columbus natives, like these, they both grew up here. And I'll just give a little perspective is that it is different. I've been in communities where not only was it harder to form the partnerships, it was closed doors. And if the mayor liked it, then the business community wasn't for it. I mean, I've lived in those communities, and I would rather try something and get it wrong than be in communities who can't get together and try things together. And we're gonna make mistakes in this generation as well. 50 years from now, they'll say, well, I'm not sure why they developed it this way or that way. Right. Hopefully they can see that we had every great intention. I think when we do look back over the history of the country and also in Columbus, that there's times when what's upsetting is the times when you can tell that there wasn't good intention. And that's where some of the real problems come from, and probably the worst, most lingering problems come from. You make development mistakes, things don't work out sometimes. We built 2 arenas. There's all kinds of examples that maybe we could have done differently. I suspect that'll continue to happen. But if we do it with intention, we do it with equity, and we do it together, I suspect we're going to get a lot farther than our partners and competitors around the country.
Yeah, Commissioner, you mentioned the Rise Together plan. So if we are going to be a more equitable community, if we are going to redress what redlining did to these communities, it was a very detailed plan. There were a lot of opportunities for private corporations, for the business community to get involved. How is that turning out?
Yeah, I mean, it's a work in progress. You can't undo literally hundreds of years overnight. And so the key is that we've got the right leaders at the table helping us to think through just what that looks like, what it means, and what it costs us from an investment standpoint. When I think about the banking institution we talked about earlier, at the heart of that is to provide lending opportunities to more African-American families, more minority families. And when you think about the history of slavery in this country and where we stand today, we've had a lot of progress as a country. I don't think anyone could argue that. But the data point that I think reads the loudest today is the fact that the average white family in America has a median home asset value of about $170,000. The average Black family has a median asset value of about $70,000. And so that difference is so significant because home ownership is wealth. Yeah. Home ownership is the ability to send your kid to college and change a generational wealth issue. It's an opportunity to start a business. It's an opportunity to invest in different things into your community. And so digging in on those things and really drilling down on where the challenges exist. One way is the Rise Together focus, where the county is focusing on poverty and racism. The other is in the private sector, where we're building a banking institution that serves needs. And the other is, where entities like the Crane, or folks like the Crane family, are helping to build an entire institution on the South Side, and that does everything from workforce development to other nonprofit or social service resources for those families. I mean,
the Cranes support everything, though. I mean, in this case, I mean, you're trying to get more, more investors involved, more people involved, get more, not the usual suspects, to take on an issue like redeveloping King Lincoln, a neighborhood that has historically been disinvested. So, is that pitch landing? Like, is the education piece you're finding an audience for that?
Yeah, I believe so. I mean, I have to be honest with you. I was born and raised here. And as they say, this isn't your father's Columbus. I mean, when I was raised in Columbus, I mean, this was a very different city, even in my high school days. I mean, I know you're thinking I'm really young. It wasn't too long ago, but it was actually a long time ago. And this is a very different Central Ohio. And I'm very hopeful that the Central Ohio that we all see 30 years from now is a very different Central Ohio. And I think that's the context of all of this growth. I mean, there's nowhere you can go in Central Ohio and you don't see an orange barrel or a crane in the sky. Not one place, not one place. And I mean, that speaks to our opportunity to get it right, to improve on what, our ancestors, started here in Central Ohio one way or another, or those who have come and joined us since.
Mm-hmm. I'll say that I think we are trying to get it right, and I keep going back to data. I know that as Columbus 2020, Kenny, led the charge here. We had 3 significant areas we wanted to impact. I don't remember all of them, but per capita income, number of jobs, and blah blah blah. And we did it. But it was, instead of taking 10 years, it took like 7 years, and it was an incredible effort, and just really took Columbus to the next level. And but one thing we did realize, and Columbus was not alone in this, but as we looked at some data from Brookings Institute, and we looked at prosperity, we looked at inclusion, specifically even geographic inclusion, we were at the bottom of the list. And it was eye-opening to us that we were just doing an incredible job of bringing new companies into the region, bringing new jobs, and raising incomes that all boats were not rising. But we were willing to look at the data and say, we can do better. And I think as we're moving forward, we're so focused on that area. So, and so prosperity is not just a word, that's a popular word these days, but what's behind it, and how do we reduce that racial equity gap? How do we create wealth? How do we create talent? How do we develop talent more equitably? How do we create quality jobs? All of us looking inward at our own organizations of how we recruit, how we hire, and attract talent, and then really change the face of this community. So I think there's heavy lifting going on, and I think that there's a real recognition that we're, again, using the data, opening our eyes, understanding the issue, and then moving forward to attack it. But we got to use metrics. We talk about bold goals. What do we as a community want to do? How are we going to really make a difference?
Sure. It is CMC's tradition to take audience questions, and we are doing this even though it's an evening forum. Is that the mic back there? Straight back here is the mic. So if you'd like to ask a question of our panel, go ahead and make your way back. Kenny, you have set bold goals for that, and are you resetting them now that Intel is here, and give yourself a little bit more of a challenge?
Yeah, I think when we got to the end of the decade, we said we wanted to be the most prosperous place in the country, and there's really 3 things behind that. There's absolutely still bold goals on growth. So without growth, you're really not going to have the revenue to do all the things we need to do. We got to have money that comes in the door. My banker tells me that all the time, and as commissioner, he reminds me of that as well. And that means we still have to have not only we have to have good jobs being created, we have to have diverse industries, and we have to have wages moving in the right direction. Sure. Which is tough to do to these days with inflation stuff. We're just looking at, but we're creating great jobs in this community. That's number 1. Number 2 is we hang our hat on being a great place, but we're affordable, right? It's one of our calling cards is you can come here, you can have a spectacular life and access to all of this and all that this region offers, and you can do it affordably. That starts with housing most of the time, as that's the biggest percentage of somebody's spend every month. And so solving the housing crisis has a lot of utility. One of those utilities is maintaining our value proposition.
Right.
Okay, so that's the second thing. And the third thing is economic mobility, right? And that means trying to close some gaps. And we're trying to close gaps in the inequities that exist in health, in geographic inequities we have across our region, and all kinds of different ways. But those 3 areas, and there's lots of metrics behind those. That's what prosperity means behind under the covers. And you'll hear us talking about that. I'm not sure I'll get a tattoo like I did on Columbus 2020 and those goals, Tanny, but like
Wait, for 2020 tattoo?
we're on our way. No, I didn't. You know I didn't do that. So again, growth, affordability, economic mobility, that's the pathway to becoming the most prosperous, or certainly more prosperous than those places we're competing with around the world, not even around the country.
Sure. Okay, you remember the rules. Make sure it's a question, no editorializing, and keep it brief. Go right ahead.
Good evening. My name is Brian Urbanski, and my wife and I have been affordable housing providers in Columbus for 20 years right now. Our company is Aubrey Homes, and I do appreciate the fact that you're addressing we have a housing crisis. I would add to that being on the front line of this housing crisis, the affordable housing community, particularly vulnerable populations, are the ones that are in greatest jeopardy right now. And this question is for Commissioner Boyce, or excuse me, for Your Honor Boyce.
Your Highness is fine.
Your Highness, I apologize. What is the plan for getting more resources to the folks, the vulnerable populations? In particular, we advocate for, and we support justice involved. And many of my colleagues don't support them. And the resources are simply not there, at least right now. Even Impact and PRC and Compass are all struggling to get funds. And when our residents struggle, we struggle, and it becomes difficult for us to provide that essential housing to them. What is the game plan for the next 12 to 24 months to generate resources so some of our most vulnerable members of our communities don't face housing instability and homelessness?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I know Jim Shimmer was here. Maybe he might have stepped out for our economic development director, but we're thinking that through. I mean, we let me talk a little bit about what we're doing with our magnet fund. We're really trying to help reduce some of the development costs so that we can spread affordable housing throughout Central Ohio, not just concentrate in Columbus. So that's one place to work directly with developers. But this Rise Together effort is really all about, is addressing those non-housing issues that support the sustainability and the stability of the family unit, making sure that there are resources that are beyond the housing. So clothing, employment, education, all of the things that provide a family with the ability to sustain a lifestyle. And we dedicated $3 million annually to what we refer to as an innovation center that will take ideas that you have and try to implement those, pilot them and implement them in Central Ohio to get at the issues you're talking about. And we've got a 10-year commitment, so I think 30 years, $30 million worth of investment in just finding innovative ways to use our dollars, use our funds to really get at some of those issues that you're saying. And I know Tanny is actually on the board of our thinking and working group for the Rise Together Innovation Center that we're developing. And so we've got multiple efforts going on. We also dedicated a portion of the conveyance fee, when you sell a home and the transfer fee, a portion of that dedicated to affordable housing and really getting at the underlying issues that help sustain families. And so, look, in my opinion, there is no silver bullet. I was raised in an environment where I can tell you the definition of poverty. So there's no silver bullet. There's no one action item that we can take that changes the face. But I think we're on the right track in terms of really providing an opportunity for good ideas, big ideas that can be implemented now to move that needle and help those families.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Katie Chrysler, Licking County resident, 1996 until I moved to Columbus after college in 2003. I do work for Deloitte. My question is, as a family of oldest of 4 girls, 4 sisters, my 3 of my sisters live in Licking County. What is the what is the partnership doing to build that trust with not just Licking County, but other counties around the area? Like Tanny talked about, that is so important.
Great question. I've been here 12 years. What was Columbus 2020 and now One Columbus. Started with 8 counties. Licking County was one of those. Now it's 11 counties. Partners like Morpsey and us sort of live and breathe those communities across those 11 counties. I don't really see, you got to close your ears, Commissioner, but I don't really see those county lines or those city boundaries. I see a market, right? And for over a dozen years now, there's been dozens of projects we've worked on with Licking County, as an example. And if you go out there, we've built so many relationships with the business community, with the development community. I don't think anybody could have planned for Intel. I mean, I've done this 28 years. It's by far the largest project, and not just here in our region or in Ohio. It's the largest project that's not an oil and gas project in the country. And so nobody could have planned for that. But on a normal basis, our team is actually there, probably a couple times a day. I see Mayor Spalding here in New Albany, Mayor Hall in Newark is great. They're great partners of ours. Our team is in Marion County every day. They're in Madison County every day, Marysville, Delaware, Pickaway County. And over time, we've worked with businesses, helping them to expand in all those areas. And we've helped those communities plan, and we've built great relationships. Is it perfect? No, because leaders are constantly changing, business needs are constantly changing. And the real kicker is the opportunities keep getting larger and the problems keep matching that, right? So the infrastructure needs and stuff like that. To the last gentleman's question, it occurred to me, on any problem we have both urgent needs and long-term needs that we actually have to work in parallel. It's not acceptable for anybody that has an urgent need that we are not addressing that and trying to fix and put at least a Band-Aid on something and build a bridge from here to there. But most of our problems are going to take long-term commitment, 10 years, 20 years, to say we're going to actually invest. We're going to do the right things. We're going to take a long-term approach to relationships. That's kind of what I was getting at before when I was talking about listening and not coming in with a prescription. Licking County is a very different county than Franklin County. And Delaware County is a very different county than that. And their leaders are different. I appreciate that. I also recognize that across the board, people want to have a great community. They want to send their kids to great schools. They want to have safe places. They want the ability to have a good job and to move themselves forward. And that's universal. And that common area is where we start every conversation. And we've gotten an awful long ways that way. And so I think the prospects for this region are really where the magic is going to be for the next 10 or 20 years.
Was there anything you wanted to cover tonight that we didn't, that you were expecting to cover tonight that I didn't hit?
No, I hate when people say no and then they answer that. So I just did that. I'm sorry. We talked about that we don't always get it right. And I don't want you to sit here and think that we are not linked to some of the challenges that we have to face. I can assure you these are things that, from Mayor Ginther to all the mayors in Central Ohio and the county commissioners all throughout the region, the corporate leaders, I can assure you that we're all thinking about, and I hear it every day, whether it's I'm dealing with bank issues, or I'm dealing with the county, or even other items. I hear it every day. And it's not just the African-American folks who are asking about diversity anymore. Now, everyone's asking about, when Kenny and I first talked about Intel and the success we're going to have there, before I could even bring it up, Kenny was bringing up the plan for inclusion and diversity. And that's the growth space. That's where we really made our mark as Central Ohio. So while we don't get it always right, I think our trajectory is positive at the very least.
Okay.
Yeah, one little annotation, as you were talking about the South Side and Crane, really, Jim Grody and the Grody family and my partner in crime, Jane Abel, if I'm not gonna say that, she was true champion, so I really wanted to state that they were actually who Mayor Coleman first called was Jim Grody, because that family grew up in the South End, as I call it. If you're from the South End, I can call it the South Side. So I wanted to add that they were the true champions. And then, you know, I guess to add on to Commissioner in terms of not getting it right, I think I've been passionate about education for over 30 years, and it's still a significant struggle. So, you know, I'm very passionate about early education, and it's terribly disappointing to think that after all these years that so many of us have focused on it, that we still have 40%, less than 40% of our kids ready for kindergarten. And that's a direct corollary to third grade reading and success. And then unconscionable, you know, our Black children are 27% of them are ready for kindergarten. So, and I feel, you know, we've been unable to change that trajectory. So there are tough areas that we still need to huddle about. And I'm always optimistic and so excited about the future of where we're going, but we have to look in the mirror and address these significant issues.
And not for nothing, there is the Crane Center for Early Childhood Research at Ohio State. So yes,
they're working on it.
Yeah,
Thank
you're
you.
working on it.
I just want to thank Jane for her work.
Well, Your Highness, Tanny, Kenny, thank you very much.
King is fine.
King.
King of Central Ohio.
I've been watching too much.
Please welcome back Kelly Atkins.
Cut that off. So like, might want to, but I mean, if you are all like I am, like I've said many times about CMC that it is like a rah Columbus place a lot of the time, and it's kind of made me the biggest fan of Columbus. But when you hear leaders like this, and when they're sharing their vulnerability and authenticity in a way that it's like, I want to be in the huddle with them. Don't you want to be in the huddle with them? Like, this is a pretty awesome display right here. So I'm just so grateful for that. Thank you for that. As we close, I'm going to ask you to help me thank everybody once again. So here we go. Our sponsors, we have the American Dairy Association Mideast and Deloitte. Our live streaming partners, the Center for Human Kindness at the Columbus Foundation and the Columbus Dispatch. And of course, our speakers, Kenny McDonald, Kevin Boyce, Tanny Crane, and our host, Doug Buchanan. And let's give them a big round of applause first. And of course, we also cannot end without thanking you for coming tonight. So thank you for making our annual meeting a success. And please enjoy the rest of the celebration, as the bar is going to be open for almost another hour. Enjoy. Yeah.